Succah Daf. Today's first email comes from Ir Tenenbaum. I had not looked at a Gemara in 40 years. I started to listen to your shir in November, shortly after my mother was nifter, and I have not missed a single daf since. I start work every morning at 3 a.m. and afterwards head straight to the gym where I listen to your daf while on the elliptical. I find your shiurim keep my attention as well as inspire me to devote more time to Torah learning. This new learning regimen has improved my life in countless ways. Thank you, and Tiskal Mitzvahs, Ira. And from Yisrael Weinstein, he says, I started joining your daily shir now from Sukkahs on Torah anytime. I'm able to understand by listening while sitting in traffic on the BQE on the way to work. And then he goes on to say that there's a big audio issue, which is true. We upgraded our equipment, so there's a very, very big issue. But Baruch Hashem, we think we have it resolved. Thanks a million. We should be able to continue learning the Daf in Yerushalayim with the Mashiach still before Tisha B'Av. Your new Talmud, Shuli Wettenstein from Brooklyn. So Succah Daf. We learned in the Mishnah that a sukkah that's less than 10 tfachim tall is possible. According to Rav Huna, we learned it from the Kruvim. The Kruvim were on top of the Aron, which was in Kodesh HaKadoshim. And just like in the first Beis HaMikdash, we know that the Kruvim stood 1/3 the height of the entire Mikdash that Shlema HaMelech built. The Kruvim themselves were 10 Amma, and they stood directly on the ground. The actual Beis HaMikdash was 30 Amma, so that's 1/3. The same exact thing, says the Gemara, is in the second Beis HaMikdash. The Kruvim stood 1/3 the height of the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash was 10 Amma tall, which is 60 Tfachim. Each Amma has 6 Tfachim. The Aron was 10 Tfachim. Therefore, the Kruvim, which were on top of the Aron, took up 10 Tfachim. It says in the pasuk, Parsei Chnofayim, they spread their wings lemala, above, Soichachim bechanfeim, and they create a shade with their wings, ala kapiris, on top of the kapiris. In other words, they were slightly above the 10 tfachim, and that the Torah considers schach. So from here we learn the idea of a sukkah has to be mesachach, has to create schach 10 tfachim above the ground. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who says the Aron, which we know in the Torah is an amma and a half, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, since the amma is only 5 tfachim when it comes to Kalim, this Aron is only 8.5 tfachim. Therefore, if the top of the Kruvim reached 20 tfachim, that means that the Kruvim themselves were 11.5 tfachim. So it can't be that he learns it from Kruvim, because otherwise you would have to say that a sukkah is supposed to be 11.5 tfachim. So where does he learn from? He learns it from the idea from Rav that when it comes to mechitza and chatzitza and shiurim, all those 3 things are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu received it directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Although you can learn that a mechitza on Shabbos has to be 10 tfachim from the Aron and Kaparis, you can't learn this out for sukkah, because it could be that a sukkah is exactly like the Aron, and the Aron together with the Kaparis is 10 tfachim, and a sukkah would say that the sukkah together with the schach is 10 tfachim, not that you need the empty space from the floor until the schach 10 tfachim. Maybe it's with the schach. The Aron was 9 tfachim. The Kapiris, which is the cover on top of the Aron, which contained the luchos, was 1 tefach. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu met, so to speak, Moshe Rabbeinu on top of the Kapiris. HaKadosh Baruch Hu never went down below 10 tfachim to earth, and Moshe and Eliyahu Hanavi never went up to Shamayim. All the psukim that seem like from the pasuk HaKadosh Baruch Hu went down and Moshe and Eliyahu went up, we have to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu went up until 10 tfachim from the ground, and Moshe and Eliyahu went up until 10 tfachim to Shamayim. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu touched the Kisei HaKavod, which is in Shamayim, and the reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, if you touch the Kisei HaKavod, that will give you a layer of protection against the Malachim, we have to say that the Kisei HaKavod came down all the way to the border between Shamayim and the in-between, where Moshe Rabbeinu was able to touch it without actually entering Shamayim. Akoponim, you see from here that 10 tfachim is considered rishus. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't go into our rishus, that's a new domain. And therefore, we're required to create a mechitza, a separation between the upper domain and the lower domain, not just from the two different sides, but from top and bottom. The kapairas is 1.5 amma by 2.5 amma. But the thickness of the kapairas is not mentioned in the Torah, and we have a machlokes. Where do we know that the kapairas' thickness is 1 tefach? According to Tanna Kama, we learn from the mizgeres on the shulchan, that decorative kli that we have around the shulchan, which is the smallest kli that we have in the Torah, which the Torah says is a tefach. What do we learn from the actual shulchan, which is 1.5 amma? Why do we learn from the mizgeres, which is only a tefach? Because of the concept of fasta merubah tefasta. If you try to grab too much, you're not going to grab anything at all. But we have the tzitz, which the Kohen Gadol wore on his forehead, the zer, which was a crown around a few of the kalim. The Torah doesn't mention a shear, and therefore we don't learn from them. Chacham say that the tzitz is 2 finger breadths, and there's a machlokes exactly how do you write Kodesh Lashem on the tzitz. According to Tanna Kama, you have the word Kodesh and then a lamed on the bottom. According to Rashi, Hashem's name Yud Kei Vav Kei is directly above it. According to Tosfos, it's to the left and top. According to Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yossi, he says, I was in Rome, I was allowed into the room, and I was able to see that it says Kodesh Lashem on one plain level. Rav Huna says, Al Pnei HaKaparis Kedma, we learn the word Pnei, it's Exeris Shava, to Kruvim. It says by Kruvim also, Pnei HaKruvim. And we know that the face of the Kruvim was at least a tefach, therefore the Kaparis is a tefach. What does Kruvim mean? Kruv means a child in Aramaic. The Kruvim looked like children. In the Merkava, there was 4 chayas. One of them had the face of a child, and the second one had a face of an adult. Have a wonderful day.